Welcome to Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets, where world-renowned author, speaker, and holistic veterinarian Dr. Judy Morgan answers your questions and offers healthy options for raising your pets in a more holistic manner. Not sure which vaccinations should be given or how often? Not sure what to use for flea, tick, and heartworm prevention? Join Dr. Judy now as she interviews the top experts and showcases the latest products that will help your pets stay naturally healthy.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Dr. Judy Morgan's Naturally Healthy Pets, and I'm your host, Dr. Judy. Today I have a special guest who has developed a company that is doing great things for our pets. And I'm always in awe when I find people who have brains that kind of blow me out of the water, and especially when I meet microbiologists, because I'm going to admit, microbiology was probably my worst class in undergrad and my worst class in veterinary school. Just not a fan of microbiology. I think partly because when I went through school, I didn't really realize how important it was going to be and how much of a role it would play in the health of my patients. And, you know, one of the big buzzwords that we hear so much about right now is the microbiome, which we'll have Holly describe that a little bit better for us as we get into the show. So my guest today, Dr. Holly Ganz, is CEO and founder of AnimalBiome. She's a microbial ecologist who has published more than 20 papers. She left academia to become an entrepreneur when she founded AnimalBiome in the fall of 2016. AnimalBiome provides assessments of the bacterial composition of the digestive tract of dogs and cats and supplements to restore balance to the gut microbiome. So basically she's playing with poop a lot, I think, but we'll find out. Her efforts to translate academic research into solutions for animal lovers began in 2015 when she launched KittyBiome, a citizen science project that she started while working at UC Davis. From the KittyBiome project, she found that imbalances in the gut microbiome are common in pets, and certainly anyone who's been listening to my show for any amount of time understands that, and you know, we all realize that it's those gut problems that are leading to so many other problems that we're having with our pets. And there is a pressing need for better approaches to maintain gut health and potentially prevent the development of many chronic health problems. And boy, I am all for that. Holly received her PhD from UC Davis, where she studied coevolution between microbes and animals, which basically means we all need to get along together and we have to have the good guys in enough numbers. After receiving her doctorate, she was awarded an international postdoctoral fellowship from the National Science Foundation to study in Switzerland, how cool is that, how genetics affects the spread of fungal infections in animal populations. Kind of weird for me because I would think of Switzerland as being too cold to have a lot of fungal problems running around. Subsequently, she was a postdoctoral fellow at UC Berkeley on an NIH-funded research project where she studied how bacterial pathogens survive in soil to infect African wildlife. Man, this is cool stuff. In collaboration with researchers at the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. She also holds an MS from UC San Diego, where she studied population genetics, and a BS from George Washington University, where she was elected to Phi Beta Kappa, received special honors in the biological sciences, and graduated magna cum laude. An animal lover, Holly is dedicated to improving animal health and wellness through the application of the latest innovations in microbiology. Holly, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And I want to know, how many years have you spent in college?
Oh, I know. I spent way too long in college. And, you know, I thought about going back to vet school after my postdoc, and my husband begged me not to.
Oh, my Lord. Well, yeah, okay, so you'll be 72 by the time you get into practice at this rate. Man, oh, man. So you know, I have taken a lot of courses in, you know, trying to decide what makes you tick. And a lot of times people who have like a million degrees and they're the most brilliant people who just, you know, keep learning more and studying and researching, somewhere along the way, and I've heard this multiple times and I just want to see if it was ever true for you, somewhere along the way somebody told them they were dumb or they weren't smart enough or they didn't know enough, and so those people spend their entire life proving how smart they are. Does that ever happen to you?
I think I really loved learning and was good in the classroom. And
well, there you go.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay, good. So she did not have her psyche scarred. She just likes to do this. So I'm glad to hear that. So tell us, just for the sake of, we've got somebody who is brilliant on this call. Tell us what the microbiome is, exactly what it does, and why we should care. And you have all the time in the world.
No problem. Yes, the microbiome is a community of bacteria and fungi and other microorganisms that live in and on us, and as well as our pets. And I mean, everything has a microbiome. Even your cell phone has a microbiome. But for living organisms, they can play really critical roles. For us and our pets, the microbes in our gut help us digest food. They actually produce some neurotransmitters. They interact with the nervous system. And, of course, they play critical roles in the immune system, because the gut provides a barrier for pathogens and chemicals to come into the body.
Right.
And
our skin forms that same role, or the animal's skin forms that same role. And one of those things that we learned in genetics, how the body actually forms, and I think what a lot of people don't really get, because it took me a while to really grasp it, is that our skin is the barrier to the outside world. And our gut is actually on the outside of our body because it has an opening at each end that is exposed to the outside. So we're kind of, our body is just like a big tube.
Yeah, exactly. We're kind of like a donut.
Exactly. We have a hole in the middle.
Yes.
And so the gut does play a very important part in keeping pathogens out of the body.
Yeah, especially because, we can eat food that has pathogens, and historically we did.
Well, and historically we still do.
Yeah, that's right.
There have been times when I've eaten some suspect things out of my refrigerator and gone, is this going to come back to bite me? I'm not sure. And most times not. So what made you decide to leave academia, start your own company, and what was the turning point where you said, wow, this is something that needs to be not sitting in a laboratory in a university, this needs to be in the hands of the general population?
Well, to be honest, I got started with AnimalBiome for sort of two reasons. One was that I found it really hard to get academic funding for research on animal health, especially for dogs and cats. The NIH, their mission is for human health, right? So veterinarians, and I was working a lot with the vet school. I did actually work as a researcher there for several years as well, and then I moved to the Genome Center. I just found that the foundations that supported that kind of research didn't have large grants, and it was very competitive to get them. And so I turned to crowdfunding as a way of sort of launching a project to try and understand what is healthy for cats in the gut microbiome. And we chose cats because they rule the internet, and or at least they did. Now there's some thought that dogs are taking over. Well, we thought it would be fun to engage people around their pets. And also because citizen science is something that's really taken off in the last decade as a way of engaging people in science and getting them excited about it, because the public's not going to fund science if they don't understand why it's relevant to them.
Sure, absolutely. So how did the AnimalBiome project work? I mean, so you did crowdfunding. People were basically just giving funds for you to be able to do the research, or, were you collecting kitty poo from around the world?
Yeah, so basically I was collecting kitty poo from around the world, and it was an academic research project. We didn't promise that we would offer anything useful from sort of a diagnostic perspective. Just we wanted to understand what is normal, and people paid $99 for us to sequence their cat poop. We got poop from all over the world, as far as Australia. We had Singapore. Lots of people in Europe. Mostly, of course, North America. But what I didn't anticipate was that about 20% of the people who supported this project had a cat with a chronic digestive condition. And And they were really unhappy with the sort of current solutions that they had been offered because these are all sort of refractory cases where the antibiotics, the steroids, and the prescription diets had failed them.
Right. Well, and then there's a large percentage of animals out there that fit in that category right now.
Yeah, and I actually found starting to talk to people about their pets to be just so rewarding, and I sort of got hooked and wanting to try and help create new solutions to help them.
So when you say you were sequencing the poo, what exactly is it that you're doing?
Yeah, so we send people a sample kit with a little vial that has a fixative in it, so they can put a little bit of poop. We sort of recommend like a sunflower seed amount, or as much as a pea size amount. They put in a little tiny vial that they.
Nice of you to send them a little tiny vial, because when I ask for a stool sample, sometimes I get 3 pounds. Don't need that much.
Exactly. No, people. Actually, one of my friends was like, "You're going to get bags of cat poop in the mail," but actually, literally. Yeah. Nobody did that. Everybody followed the directions. So I'm very proud of our study participants. And then we receive that sample. We pull the material out of the fixative, and then we extract DNA from that. And so there we're getting all the DNA. Most of it, though, is the microbes in the microbiome, and not so much as the cat or dog DNA, because we asked them to take the material from the inside of the poop, because we were trying to avoid like litter contamination and things like that.
Sure.
Then we actually do a reaction that it's called PCR, the polymerase chain reaction, to amplify a region of the bacterial genome that's called 16S ribosomal RNA. And basically, it's just a marker gene that has been used to describe the diversity of bacteria. And then we actually use a platform called Illumina, which is a next-generation sequencing platform, to sequence that little bit of DNA that we have made many copies of using PCR.
So does this actually tell you which bacteria are living in that sample?
Yes. So what it allows us to do is to identify to the genus level which bacteria are in the sample when we're just doing a subset of the 16S gene. We are also launching another test where we can actually get to species level. So it just depends on how much of the bacterial genome you sequence allows you to identify it to sort of different levels.
And then, all right, so you got all these different samples from different people, and I'm assuming no two samples sequence the same. They all have different bacteria, yes?
That's right.
And did you find, were you able to take that, because now comes in the math part and the statistics and all that stuff, were you able to take that and look at it and say, okay, well, these cats who, that were on steroids or on, metronidazole, or were on, treatment for IBD versus cats that seem to have no digestive issues, were you able to then group that and look at it and say, well, cats that are suffering with bowel disease tend to fall over in this column, and cats with a healthy bowel tend to fall in this column? I mean, what were you able to do with that information?
Exactly. So we, while we initially were just trying to say, like, what is normal for cats, of course, that turns out to be a very complicated question. It was very clear that the cats that had these chronic GI problems tended to have low diversity of bacteria. And what that means is that they had not that many different kinds of bacteria, and they often had one or a few groups of bacteria that were taking over most of the sample. So
did those tend to be more pathogenic bacteria, like bad bacteria that were taking over, or didn't really matter, it was just that one or two species took over?
So it does depend. So sometimes there's a lot of E. coli, I would say, but that's not the majority of the time, but that's certainly something that fell out as being sort of an obvious signal that we could see, and something that we can address that's I think is actionable from a veterinary perspective. But often it's organisms that are normally found in the healthy microbiome, but when the system gets depleted, particularly from things like antibiotic exposure, then some groups that are normally there can just go crazy and become overrepresented. And a great example for people, and we are finding this with a certain number of pets as well, is Clostridium difficile.
Right.
which people can end up acquiring in the hospital.